Hi, I'm Hugh Gilmore here at Warner Music, very fittingly in the bowels of Warner Music in the fire pit, showing you the new Black Sabbath box set, the vinyl collection 1970 to 1978. It's quite a hefty set, it literally is heavy. So let's look at the contents. Firstly, it comes in this really handsome slipcase. The cover, it was something the band chose. It was something I designed last year for a singles box set that didn't get used. This little kind of adapter thing is the little devil motif. It's Henry is his nickname, but I kind of created this kind of dink thing as an adapter. Also, I think significantly, I think this is the last box set that's going to use this WB logo. So buy it, kids, while you can now. This is very limited. This one is actually 2,824 out of 3,000, so get them while they're hot. So let's look at what's inside. Black Sabbath, where it all began. It's released on February the 13th, Friday, February the 13th, 1970. The cover, which I always assumed was somewhere in Birmingham, some sort of industrial wasteland, is actually, wasn't far from where I lived. It's actually in Oxfordshire, Mapledurham Mill. But a lovely gatefold, which you didn't get in America, with the spookily satanic inverted cross. All of these sleeves actually come with inner bags that either have artwork on them or liner notes. So each inner bag tells the story of the record with replicas of the original American labels. In this case, the 1970 olive label. Now this is the big one. Every home should have one. Well, every home should have this box set, but only 3,000 of you can have a box set. Paranoid, 1970. The album was originally going to be called War Pigs, hence why we've got this little chap in kind of swimming trunks and a sword and a helmet waving. He's obviously a war pig, but the label felt that it was a bit too inflammatory when the Vietnam War still waging to call it War Pigs, so they swiftly changed it to Paranoid, which was obviously their hit single at the time. Chap's inside on a hill somewhere. Again, this is in a bag with liner notes inside. Moving forwards to 1971, Master of Reality. Considered some of their heaviest stuff. There's a detuning quite heavily for this one. Always loved this photograph taken by Keith, who designed the first 3 or 4 LP sleeves of the band in a woodland. And again with liner notes inside. Moving forward to 1972, Black Sabbath Volume 4. Again, probably my favourite Sabbath record. Certainly they were getting more and more varied by this stage. Photograph from Birmingham Town Hall from a concert in 1972. Again, illustrated in a bag. And we're still using the olive labels at this stage. End of 1973, beginning of 1974, they released Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. One of the significant things for me about this sleeve is actually illustrated by a guy called Drew Struzan, who went on to kind of greater fame, designing posters for the likes of Indiana Jones and Star Wars. He did an illustration for the back and for the front. And again, this comes with a gatefold. This was the image inside the gatefold in the European versions, but I don't think the US actually got the gatefold. So you've got it now. And again, there's illustrated liner notes inside. Also, we're moving, I think we changed labels by this time from the olive ones to these very pretty. You might know this from things like Fleetwood Mac Rumours, but the Burbank Pawn labels. Sabotage, 1975. I think this has some of their strongest and heaviest songs in there, with Hole in the Sky, Sips in the Universe. Boringly, this only came in a single sleeve everywhere in the world, no inner bag, but hey, we've got a gatefold here. We've got some nice images and notes in there, and also a reproduction of the original tape box, production box. So it's one of the first Black Sabbath records I ever bought, partly because I like the sleeve. I found the sleeve so wacky. I think Ozzy described it as 2 robots having sex on an escalator. It certainly doesn't look pleasant or comfortable. In the aftermath of the event on the inside, Colin Elgee was the guy who painted it. He also painted Dark Side of the Moon as the prism for that. So there you go, a little bit of insight there. And again, we've got nice inner bag, this time with lyrics, which that appeared on the original artwork. And again, we've got some nice illustrations of the band there, which is from the tour program, and some singles. I don't think they released any singles in the UK, certainly not in commercial ones in the States, but some illustrations of some international singles in there. And the last LP from the original studio albums is Never Say Die. The last two records were designed by Hypnosis, who are famed for designing sleeves for Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin, and they designed these last two Sabbath records. The original LP came with a kind of schematic, the chaps on the front. And again, we've moved on to this more sort of funky label. Seen a lot of George Benson albums. And again, nice gatefold sleeve with some liner notes, some international singles covers. So those are the main records, which I'm going to put over here. Now these are the really exciting bits. Doing my research, I found out that the band released an awful lot of singles in America as mono versions, and apparently this was on AM radio, which was still popular right up until the 80s. Mono records sounded louder on the radio than stereo records, so quite often for promo only, the label would create a mono promo version, and I found enough to actually create this this compilation of their mono versions, quite often edited for radio as well, because a lot of Sabbath songs are quite long and these are quite short. Again, there's an explanation of that. Also, significantly, there's a version of Evil Woman that is a different mix. It wasn't on the UK album. It has a lot of horns sections on it. So, again, for the hardcore. So yeah, the original early 70s promos had a black and white label, and then later on in the decade they moved to the Burbank Pawn label. So that deals with music. And what do we have here? We have a Nunmore black folio with the Henry the Devil motif there. Very classy. There's a first ever Black Sabbath tour program. This is 1971 tour program to promote Paranoid, beginning January 71. Some fab pictures of the band in there. Bands didn't often do tour programs for every tour. Sabbath certainly didn't, because the next one I was aware of was the Sabotage tour book. Again, it's some contemporary photographs. There's some contemporary liner notes. Some nice shots of the band. Things obviously got a bit more sophisticated later on in the decade when they came to the 1976-77 Technical Ecstasy tour book. And these were the kind of schematic drawings of the band featured. And again with liner notes from the time. Nice advert for the Technical Ecstasy album there. And the last tour book of the decade was the 10th anniversary 1978 tour book for Never Say Die. Again, featuring Henry the Devil in full colour this time. And again, this has got lots of contemporary shots of the group. And finally, there's a 7-inch single. Now, this is actually Evil Woman, which was a song originally by the band Crow that the band covered. It appeared on the European versions of the LP, but was replaced by the song Wicked World, which actually appears on the B-side in the States. So, as a collector, I was always after a copy of Wicked World, but I'd meet Americans who were always after a copy of Evil Woman. But now in this box set, you can get the lot. So that's the Black Sabbath vinyl collection, 1970 to 1978.